Imagine this. Someone is watching you. They know where you live, where you work, what time you leave, and what time you come home. At first, it's just uncomfortable glances. Then, it's messages. Then, it's threats. You report it. You beg for help, but no one listens. Until one day, that person steps out of the shadows, and by then, it's too late. This isn't just some scene from a psychological thriller. This is real life. And for Clare Bernal, this was her reality, a nightmare that unfolded in broad daylight in one of London's most prestigious department stores. She was young, ambitious, full of life, and had a promising future ahead of her. But one wrong encounter, one brief relationship, was enough to set in motion a tragic chain of events. It started with a man named Michael Pech, a man she barely knew, a man she dated for only a few weeks, a man who refused to accept the word no. Michael wasn't just obsessed, he was dangerous, and the warning signs were all there. But, as is so often the case, no one took them seriously. Not the police, not the legal system. No one. And Clare, she was left to navigate a relentless campaign of fear, until, one day, the nightmare reached its horrifying conclusion. This is the true story of how a stalking obsession turned deadly. Clare Bernal was a bright, kind-hearted woman living in London. She worked as a beauty consultant at the luxury department store Harvey Nichols, where she met Michael Pech. He was a security guard, tall, brooding, and at first glance, harmless. Their brief encounter quickly turned into something much darker, and Clare, like many before her, would soon learn just how dangerous Michael truly was. The two briefly dated, but it didn't take long for Clare to realize something was deeply wrong with Michael. His possessiveness was alarming, and his jealousy seemed to know no bounds. He became controlling in ways that made her uncomfortable, constantly questioning her about where she was, who she was with, and what she was doing. It wasn't long before Clare recognized the signs and decided to end the relationship. She hoped that with time, Michael would simply move on and respect her decision. But Michael didn't take rejection lightly. Instead of accepting Clare's wishes and moving on, he became fixated on her. At first, it was just a few late-night messages and calls, but things escalated quickly. He wouldn't stop contacting her, and his behavior began to feel invasive and suffocating. Michael's obsession soon turned into something far more sinister. He started showing up uninvited, lurking in the shadows, and following her wherever she went. Clare knew this wasn't normal, and the once innocent encounters turned into moments of fear. Clare did everything she could to protect herself. She went to the police, reporting the constant harassment and his increasingly erratic behavior. The authorities listened, and in response, Michael was arrested. But Clare's relief was short-lived. She had hoped that his arrest would be the end of the torment, but she was wrong. The system, unfortunately, failed her. Michael was granted bail over and over again, each time with conditions that meant little to him. He was released back into society, free to continue his dangerous obsession with Clare, despite the warning signs that he had no intention of stopping. And Clare, she was left to live in constant fear, knowing that at any moment, Michael could reappear. The nightmare wasn't over. It was just beginning. For 12 days, Clare heard nothing from Michael. No calls, no texts, no sightings. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of relief. Maybe he had finally given up. Maybe, just maybe, she was free. But she wasn't, because Michael wasn't done with her. He was simply waiting, watching, biding his time. September 13th, 2005. The day everything fell apart. It started like any other evening at Harvey Nichols. The store bustled with the usual after-work crowd. Customers making their final purchases, employees finishing up their shifts, chatting about weekend plans, eager to clock out and head home. The scent of expensive perfumes lingered in the air, the soft hum of conversations mixing with the sound of heels clicking against the polished floors. No one noticed him at first. Michael slipped in, unnoticed, through the employee entrance, a place he once had access to, a place where he knew exactly where to go, how to move without drawing attention. But this time, he wasn't there to work. This time, he had a different purpose. His mind was clouded, a dangerous cocktail of drugs and obsession fueling his every move. His grip tightened around the cold metal of the gun hidden beneath his jacket. His pulse pounded in his ears, drowning out the noise of the store. His eyes, wild and unhinged, scanned the floor until they landed on her. Clare. She was standing at the beauty counter, completely unaware, helping a customer, smiling, laughing, living. She never even saw him coming. Then, bang! A gunshot tore through the air, shattering the illusion of normalcy in an instant. Then another, then another. 4 bullets, each one finding its mark, each one spelling the end. The store erupted into chaos. Customers screamed, ducking for cover. Employees froze in shock, their brains unable to process what had just happened. Claire staggered. Her body trembled as pain ripped through her. The world around her blurred, her vision darkening as she collapsed onto the cold, hard floor. Blood pooled beneath her. Her breaths, shallow and desperate, faded into nothing. She was gone. But Michael wasn't finished. As people scrambled, some too terrified to move, others too shocked to scream, he raised the gun one last time and pulled the trigger. His body crumpled to the ground beside hers. Just like that, in the middle of a crowded store, 2 lives were lost. But the tragedy didn't stop there. The silence that followed was deafening, the air thick with fear. The scent of gunpowder and blood lingered. Employees, once filled with routine and familiarity, now stood frozen, their eyes wide with horror. Some fell to their knees, sobbing. Others turned away, unable to look at the scene before them. Witnesses would later describe it as surreal, a nightmare they couldn't wake up from. The sound of gunfire replayed in their minds for weeks, months, years. Some never stepped foot in that store again. One employee, who had worked alongside Claire for years, recalled the way she used to brighten everyone's day with her infectious smile. Now that smile was gone, stolen in an instant. And Claire's family, they were shattered. A mother who lost her daughter. A father who would never walk her down the aisle. Friends who would never hear her laugh again. Their world, once whole, was now in ruins. All because of one man, one obsession, one moment of pure, unrelenting evil. Claire's funeral was devastating. A sea of mourners filled the church. Family, friends, co-workers, even customers who had been touched by her kindness. The grief in the air was suffocating. A young woman full of life and dreams was now gone, her future stolen in an instant. Her parents, Martin and Tricia, stood side by side, but the weight of their loss was pulling them apart. Martin was consumed with anger. He blamed the police, accusing them of ignoring clear warning signs. Michael had stalked Claire relentlessly, and yet nothing was done. If they had just acted sooner, if they had taken her fears seriously, maybe, just maybe, she would still be alive. But his anger didn't stop there. He turned on Tricia. He accused her of downplaying Michael's threats, of trusting the system too much. If she had pushed harder, demanded more action, could things have been different? The question haunted them both. Tricia, broken and guilt-ridden, admitted that she had put too much faith in the authorities. She believed Claire was safe. She wanted to believe it. And now, she would have to live with that regret for the rest of her life. But instead of letting guilt consume her, Tricia made a choice. She fought back. She became a voice for victims of stalking, pushing for stronger laws, demanding change. She refused to let Claire's death be just another statistic. She joined forces with other families, spoke out on national platforms, and campaigned tirelessly to make sure no one else would suffer the way Claire did. And in 2012, after years of relentless advocacy, their fight paid off. Stalking was officially recognized as a criminal offense in the UK. A victory, but a small one. Because here's the harsh reality. Stalking is still not taken seriously. Victims are still dismissed. The police still say, "There's nothing we can do." And the cycle continues. Men like Michael Pech still exist. They're still out there, watching, waiting, obsessing. And until law enforcement treats stalking as a real and imminent threat, innocent people will continue to suffer. Claire's story is heartbreaking, but what makes it even worse? She's not the only one. This has happened before. It's happening right now. And unless we demand real change, it will happen again. Thank you for listening to True Crime Story. If Claire's story angered you as much as it did me, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you want to support the podcast, consider becoming a member. Your support helps us continue telling these stories, raising awareness, and hopefully making a difference. Until next time, stay safe, trust your instincts, and remember, if someone makes you feel uncomfortable, don't ignore it. Because sometimes, the scariest monsters aren't the ones in horror movies. They're the ones walking among us.